Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
First of all, let's thank to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala who has been giving us some mercies and blessings so that we can attend this translation subject class with a good condition. Especially for us as the presenter, we can record a video of us informing and explaining our topics to you guys as the audiences and viewers of this video. Even though our class is by online, I know you guys still have a good spirit, as good as when we did the class in the campus. But now guys, we cannot go there due to the pandemic coronavirus that has been spreading in around the world, including our country, Indonesia. So guys, as a good friend, I want to remind you to just stay at home, stay healthy, and do the social distancing in order to be far from that pandemic coronavirus, and then we want to be infected from that virus. So guys, by the way, my name is Lutfi Muharisi and I'm from Group 10. I'm not here alone. Of course I'm not alone. How do we call this as the group work if I just did it alone? So I have two friends here, two beautiful friends actually. That is Dia Indria and Windy Febriani Lubis. We are from Group 10, and then we are gonna explain you the kinds of translation according to experts. Kinds of translation according to experts. Number 1. Kinds of translation according to Roman Jacobson. So Roman Jacobson classified the translation according to the type of system or sign involved. And then the second is Savory. Savory classified the translation according to the type of text to be translated. And then the third is Nida and Savory. Nida and Savory make a classification of the translation according to the process of translation and emphasis. So guys, here I'm gonna explain you briefly about kinds of translation according to Roman Jacobson, and also some points in according to Savory. So guys, Roman Jacobson distinguishes translation into three parts. That is intralingual translation, and then interlingual translation, and then intersemiotic translation. What is intralingual translation? Intralingual translation is a conversion of a text into another text based on the interpretation of a translator, and both texts are written in the same language. And then the second is interlingual translation. Interlingual translation is translation in the real sense. In this type, a translator rewrites the meaning or text message from the source language into the target language. And then the third is intersemiotic translation. Intersemiotic translation involves the interpretation of a text into another interpretation of a form or system or sign involved. So that is kinds of translation according to Roman Jacobson. And then we are going to the next experts, that is Savory. So guys, Savory distinguishes the kinds of translation into four parts, but I will only explain you three parts. Why? Because the other one will be explained by my beautiful friend Dia Indria. So that three parts is perfect translation, adequate translation, and then a composite translation. So guys, perfect translation is a kinds of translation that is including all the informative writings that is often found in public places or on the street. The examples of this translation is like don't smoking in McDonald's area maybe, and then No outside food and drinks allowed in the cinema maybe. And then keep off the grass in the park. And then the second is adequate translation. This kind of translation is for general readers who wants to get information regardless for what the original texts might look like. And then what they want is a good reading. This kind of translation include translation of English pulp novels into Indonesian. And then the third is composite translation. Composite translation. This is the translation that is done as well as possible, so that all aspects in the search language can be transferred as well to the target language. These aspects are meanings, message, and style. Okay, that's all the explanation about the kinds of translation according to Roman Jacobson and some points according to Savory. And the next discussion will be explained by our beautiful friend, Dea Indria.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, how are you today? I feel great today. Okay, my name is Dea Indria. Here I will explain or present my material. It still discuss about category in kinds of translation according to Savory. The last category is scientific, manuscript, and technical translation. In general, this type can be distinguished from other types of translation when viewed from the contents of translation text. In these types includes only the translation text about science and techniques. For the example, translating book related to computer science from English to Indonesia in order to develop the information about computer in Indonesia. And the next material are literal, dynamic, semantic, and communicative translation. In this section, Nida and Taber, Larson and Newmark are discussed together. For the first is literal translation. Literal translation is a translation that prioritizes the equivalent of words or expression in the target language that have the same reference or meaning as words or expression in search language. For example, the word cat is a cat in Indonesian and shouldn't be interpreted more than a small four-legged animal. And the cat is feline family. The second is dynamic translation. The concept of dynamic translation is actually never explicitly mentioned in the literature of translation. According to Nida and Taber, dynamic translation is a translation that contains all 5 elements that are message reproduction, equivalence or equivalent, the natural equivalent, the closest equivalent, and give priority of meaning. For example, the word summer in the sentence, "Shall I compare tea with a summer day?" This sentence is a compliment for a woman whose beauty. According to Shakespeare, except that of summer beauty in England. Summer in UK or United Kingdom marked by blooming flowers. The sun appears but not as hot as in Indonesia. Okay, that's all my presentation about my material, and the next material will be presented by Windy Febriani.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Windy Febriani. In here, I will continue the explanation. The third is about literal and idiomatic translation. According to Larson, the literal translation is a translation that attempts to imitate the source language verb. What this means by from here is the word and structure used. In other words, in a literal translation, the translator uses target language that have the same literal meaning as the source language word. By Larson, the variety of translation is constructed with idiomatic translation. This translation seeks to create the meaning in source language, the meaning that the author or native speaker wishes to convey, the flexible word and sentence structure in a target language. This, a truly idiomatic translation, will not feel like a translation, but feels like an original writing. And the next is the fourth, semantic and communicative translation. Communicative translation is basically a subjunctive translation because it tries to achieve the effect of certain thought or action on the part of language reader. In the actual process, it is possible for the translator to do semantic translation first and then modify it until the result of the translation can have desired effect. The translation of Muslim Holy Book has a different variety from the translation of the Gospel, which, in accordance with Nida and Taber advice, use a variety of dynamic or communicative translation. To simply look at the differences, consider the following comparison. Bible translation. Nida and Taber explained the need for several priorities in the translation of the Bible, including 1. To form of language that have here or spoken language must be prioritized over the form of written language. The 2. This gospel is often read to a group of listeners or worshippers as a comment or guide. The 3 is in some part of the world there is a habit of reading alone. Therefore, these people must be able to understand the gospel in oral form. And the 4th is the gospels are often preached through radio and television, electronic media. Quran translation. According to Muslim belief, the Quran is a collection of Allah's revelation which were conveyed to the Prophet Muhammad, who contain aqidah, commands, and prohibition. And the 2 is classical Arabic or Arabic Quran. Since the revival of Islam at the end of the 19th century AD is studied and preserved in formal, standard, and written language. And the 3rd is the Quran is intended for all mankind, so it is universally inclusive. Young and old, male, female, adult, child, rich, poor, so that the language of the Quran and its translation does not distinguish gender or gender, age, or social status of humans. And the fourth is translation of the Quran must always consider the aspect that accompany an passage of verse. And here is the characteristic of semantic and communicative translation. In our paper is have 24, but in here I will explain just 3. And the first is semantic translation is siding with the original author. In other communicative translation in favor of the target language readers. And the two is semantic translation, prioritizing the source language author to process. In communicative translation, give priority to the intent of the author source language. And the third, in semantic translation, is connected with source language author as individuals. In communicative translation, prioritize the target language readers in order to understand the mind, the culture content of source language. That the translation of the Quran must be semantic, formal, written, while the opinions of the translator are included in the interpretation. So, the conclusion, meanwhile, the dynamic translation, idiomatic translation, and communicative translation have a fundamental similarity, namely to produce a good and easy to understand target language of the text. Even so, if you look closely, they have a little differences. Dynamic translation places more emphasis on the importance of natural equivalent. In other words, the focus is semantic form, word, or phrase. Whereas Larson sees the attached importance to idiomatic expression or the flexibility of the target language of the text. Likewise, the communicative translation, basically idiomatic translation or communicative translation. This latter type of translation emphasizes the structure of sentence and natural expression. In terms of this high level of readability, Newmark agrees because with its communicative translation concept, it doesn't suggest that a target language of the text should be easily read by the reader. But there are also differences between them. Nida and Tabor advantage dynamic translation regardless of the type of text and lesson. Likewise with idiomatic translation. Meanwhile, Newmark states the both literal semantic or communicative translation can be used and are equally good, but depend on the type of search language of the tag. The first try must be a literal translation. If the literal translation does not match, then see the type of the text. In the target language of the text is expressive, then semantic translation might be better. But if the type of text is general, then what should be so is communicative translation. Okay, I think that's all my explanation. If I have some mistake, I'm so sorry. Thank you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
So guys, those all the explanation about the kinds of translation according to some experts. We hope you guys can get a new knowledge related to our topics, and then we want to say happy quarantine, happy fasting, and 7 days left. We are approaching the Eid Mubarak if I'm not mistaken. So we want to say sorry for all our mistakes. And at the end of the video, we want to say Hamdalah, Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you guys in the next video or in the next meeting. I love you all.